The alarming news. The grand hall of the Galactic Palace echoed with the soft hum of technology and the whispered conversations of alien diplomats. Massive crystal pillars lined the room, glowing with a pale blue light that illuminated the luxurious surroundings. At the center of it all, sitting on a high golden throne, was Empress Zalkara. Her golden scales shimmered in the light, and her piercing green eyes scanned the room with the sharpness of a predator. The Empress of the Zalkari Empire was known for her ruthless nature and had ruled over dozens of star systems with an iron fist. Today, however, she sensed something was off. Her long tail flicked impatiently, and her clawed fingers drummed against the armrest of her throne. The court was unusually quiet. It was almost as if the air was thick with tension. Empress Zalkara's instincts, honed through years of ruling, told her that bad news was coming. She didn't have to wait long. A pair of heavily armored guards marched into the hall, their footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Between them walked an alien wearing the uniform of a Zalkari spy, dark, form-fitting, and designed for stealth. His face was pale, and his eyes were wide with worry. The guard stopped in front of the Empress, and the spy dropped to one knee, bowing his head low. "Rise," Empress Zalkara commanded, her voice cold and commanding. "What news do you bring that is so urgent?" The spy stood up, his hands trembling slightly as he held out a small datapad. "My Empress," he began, his voice shaky, "our scouts have discovered something unexpected. A new threat, perhaps." Zalkara's eyes narrowed. A threat? In her empire? She snatched the datapad from his hands and began reading. Her eyes moved quickly over the information, and her expression slowly shifted from one of curiosity to disbelief, then to anger. "Humans," she hissed, her voice dripping with disdain. "You are telling me that a race of humans, primitive, unremarkable creatures, has managed to build a fleet of 200 supercarriers." Her voice rose, echoing through the grand hall. The court fell silent, every eye on the Empress. The spy swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Yes, my Empress. The humans were once considered a minor species, not worth our attention. But it seems they have been building their strength in secret. Our intelligence reports confirm that their fleet is indeed real, and it's headed toward the outer rim of our empire." Empress Zalkara's tail lashed out, striking the floor with a loud crack. She stood up, her eyes blazing with fury. "How could this happen without us knowing? How could they have hidden this from our spies?" The spy took a step back, his voice barely a whisper. They have been very careful, my Empress. It seems they have advanced more than we thought. Their technology is formidable." "Formidable." Zalkara's voice was a low growl. "How dare they challenge the might of the Zalkari Empire? How dare they think they can stand against me?" The Empress's fury was palpable. She turned to her council members, who sat along the sides of the hall, their faces a mix of shock and fear. "Summon my war council," she ordered, her voice cold and precise. "I want every detail about these humans. I want to know where they came from, how they built such a fleet, and what their intentions are." The council members nodded quickly, scurrying to carry out her orders. The Empress sat back down on her throne, her mind racing. How could a species she had dismissed as insignificant become such a threat? The Zalkari Empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries, crushing any who dared to oppose it. But now, these humans, with their 200 supercarriers, posed a challenge she could not ignore. As the council members and guards hurried out of the hall, Zalkara stared at the datapad in her hand. Images of the human fleet filled the screen. Massive ships, bristling with weapons, each one a fortress in space. She clenched her jaw. This was an insult she could not tolerate. The humans would learn the price of defying her empire. She would crush them and their fleet, and make them an example to any who thought to challenge her rule. Minutes later, the War Council assembled in the Grand Hall, each member taking their place around a large, circular table in front of the throne. The table was a holographic display, projecting a map of the galaxy and the known locations of the human fleet. General Thax, one of the Empress's most trusted military leaders, stepped forward. His reptilian features were set in a grim expression. "My Empress," he began, bowing deeply, "our scouts report that the human fleet is currently positioned near the outer rim. They seem to be holding their position, but their intent is unclear. We have dispatched more scouts to monitor their movements." Zalkara nodded, her expression unreadable. "And what do we know of their capabilities?" she asked. General Thax activated the holographic display, showing detailed images of the human supercarriers. "Our analysts believe these ships are equipped with advanced shielding and powerful weapons. Their technology is on par with our own, perhaps even superior in some areas. They have kept their development hidden from us, which suggests they have considerable strategic intelligence." The Empress's eyes narrowed as she studied the images and their numbers. 200 ships, you say? That is more than the combined fleets of our nearest rivals. General Thax nodded. "Yes, my Empress. It appears the humans have been preparing for a long time. They may have allies we are unaware of, or they have resources we have yet to discover." Zalkara's claws dug into the armrest of her throne. "Prepare the fleet," she commanded. "If the humans wish to challenge the Zalkari Empire, then they will face the full might of our warships. We will teach them the cost of defiance." The council members bowed in unison, acknowledging the Empress's command. As they hurried to carry out her orders, Empress Zalkara stared at the images of the human fleet one last time. Her anger burned bright, but beneath it was a flicker of something else. A challenge. The humans had surprised her, and that was not something she took lightly. But Zalkara was not one to back down. She would show these humans that the Zalkari Empire was not to be underestimated. The galaxy would watch, and they would see that no one, not even a fleet of 200 supercarriers, could stand against the might of Empress Zalkara. Human preparation. On the far side of the galaxy, the human fleet floated silently in the dark void of space. 200 supercarriers, each one a massive metal fortress, formed a protective circle around Earth's most valuable space station, the Eden. The station was a marvel of human engineering, shining brightly with lights and bristling with advanced technology. It was the pride of humanity, a symbol of their progress and strength. Inside the command center of the Eden, Admiral Marcus Stone stood in front of a large screen displaying the fleet's status. Marcus was a seasoned officer, known for his sharp mind and calm demeanor. His eyes scanned the data on the screen, noting the readiness of each supercarrier. Around him, officers worked at their stations, their fingers flying over control panels, their eyes focused on their tasks. Marcus turned to his second-in-command, Captain Elena Rodriguez, who was reviewing a series of reports. "How are our preparations, Elena?" he asked, his voice steady. Elena looked up, her face serious. "Everything is on schedule, Admiral. The fleet is fully operational, and all supercarriers are ready for combat. Our pilots and crews have completed their final checks, and the weapons systems are online. We're ready to move at your command." Marcus nodded, satisfied with the report. "Good. We've worked hard for this moment, and we can't afford any mistakes. The Zalkari Empire won't be easy to deal with. They've dominated the galaxy for too long, thinking they're untouchable. It's time they learn what humanity is capable of." Elena's eyes sparkled with determination. "Do you think they know about us, Admiral? About our fleet?" Marcus rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "It's possible. The Zalkari have spies everywhere, but we've been careful, keeping our movements hidden and our plans secret. Even if they know, they won't expect us to have a fleet of this size and power." Elena nodded in agreement. "The element of surprise will be our greatest weapon. They think of us as a minor species, weak and insignificant. That arrogance will be their downfall." Marcus smiled. "Exactly. The Zalkari may have the numbers, but we have the advantage of technology and strategy. Our supercarriers are equipped with the latest in stealth technology, advanced shields, and powerful weapons. and our crews are the best trained in the galaxy. We're ready for anything the Zalkari throw at us." As Marcus and Elena discussed the strategy, the doors to the command center slid open, and a group of scientists entered, led by Dr. Sophia Hayes. Sophia was the chief scientist in charge of the Eden's research division, and her work had been crucial in developing the fleet's advanced systems. "Admiral Stone," Sophia greeted, her voice carrying a tone of excitement. "I've just completed the final tests on our new weapon systems. The results are better than we expected." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Better, you say? That's good news. What did you find?" Sophia pulled up a holographic display, showing the specs of a new weapon. "We've managed to increase the output of our plasma cannons by 30%. This means our supercarriers can deliver more powerful attacks with greater precision. Also, our new targeting system allows us to lock on to multiple targets simultaneously, making us much more effective in battle." Marcus's smile widened. "Excellent work, Dr. Hayes. This will give us a significant advantage. The Zalkari won't know what hit them." Sophia nodded. "There's more. We've also improved our shields, making them more resistant to energy-based attacks. This will give our supercarriers greater durability in combat." Marcus felt a surge of confidence. With these upgrades, our fleet will be unstoppable. The Zalkari may have the numbers, but they don't have our technology. As the team continued to discuss the details, a young officer approached, his face serious. "Admiral, we've received a transmission from one of our deep space scouts. They've detected increased Zalkari activity near the outer rim. It looks like they're mobilizing their fleet." Marcus' expression turned serious. "So, the Zalkari are preparing for a fight. It's just as we expected. They won't let us challenge their authority without a response." Elena crossed her arms. "They're probably planning to confront us before we can reach their core systems. We'll need to be ready to engage them on their terms." Marcus nodded, his mind already working through the possibilities. "We need to anticipate their movements and stay one step ahead. Our scouts will keep monitoring their fleet, and we'll adjust our plans as needed. We can't afford to be caught off guard." He turned back to the main screen, displaying the fleet's status and the position of the Zalkari forces. "All right, everyone," Marcus announced, his voice firm. "We've trained for this. We've prepared for this. Now is the time to show the galaxy what humanity can do. We will not back down, and we will not be defeated. The Zalkari think they can intimidate us, but they have no idea what they're up against." The officers around the room straightened, their faces reflecting the same determination that Marcus felt. The air in the command center buzzed with energy and purpose. The time for preparation was over. Now, it was time for action. Marcus looked at Elena, then at Sophia, and finally back at the main screen. "Send out the order to all supercarriers. The fleet is to enter Phase 1 of the operation. We will move into position and await further instructions. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Humanity's destiny is in our hands." With that, the command center sprang into action. Officers relayed orders, screens lit up with data, and the hum of activity filled the air. The human fleet, 200 supercarriers strong, began to move, ready to face the Zalkari Empire. This was the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history, one that would be written by the courage and strength of humanity. As the Eden's engines powered up, Admiral Marcus Stone stood tall, a look of resolve on his face. The humans were ready, and they would show the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. The battle was coming, and they would meet it head-on, with everything they had. Empress's attack plan. The vast expanse of space outside the galactic palace was filled with the hum of preparation. The Zalkari fleet, a formidable armada of sleek, deadly ships, was assembling at the edge of the Empire's territory. Inside the war room of the galactic palace, Empress Zalkara stood at the center of a massive holographic display, her eyes fixed on the swirling galaxy projected before her. The room was dimly lit, with only the glow of the holograms casting light on the faces of the War Council members. General Thax, the Empress's most trusted military leader, was at her side, his expression grim. "My Empress," he began, "our scouts have confirmed that the human fleet is approaching. They are maintaining their formation around their space station, the Eden. It seems they are preparing for a possible conflict." Zalkara's eyes narrowed. "The humans are braver than I expected. They dare to challenge the might of the Zalkari Empire. They will regret underestimating us." The War Council members, a mix of high-ranking Zalkari officers and strategists, murmured in agreement. The atmosphere in the room was tense, filled with anticipation and anxiety. Zalkara's reputation for ruthlessness was well known, and the prospect of a war with an unknown enemy had put everyone on edge. The Empress turned to her tactical advisor, a Zalkari with a sharp intellect and a cold demeanor. "What is our strategy, Advisor Vrax?" she demanded. "How do we deal with this human threat?" Vrax stepped forward, activating a series of holographic maps and tactical displays. "My Empress, our initial assessment shows that the human fleet is organized and technologically advanced. They have managed to keep their true strength hidden until now. However, we have identified several key weaknesses that we can exploit." Zalkara leaned closer to the display, her eyes focused. "Tell me more. What are their weaknesses?" Vrax pointed to a section of the holographic map. "Their fleet is formidable, but it is not without its vulnerabilities. First, their supercarriers, while powerful, are relatively slow. We can use this to our advantage. If we launch a surprise attack and disable their communications, we can force them into disarray." The Empress nodded thoughtfully. "A surprise attack could indeed catch them off guard. What about their defensive capabilities?" "According to our intelligence," Vrax continued, "the humans have invested heavily in their shielding and weaponry. However, their shields are strongest on the front of their supercarriers. If we strike from multiple directions, we can overwhelm their defenses and target their weaker spots." General Thax spoke up, his voice firm. "We should also consider a two-pronged attack. While we engage the human fleet directly, we can deploy a secondary force to target their space station, the Eden. If we can destroy it or severely damage it, the humans will lose their central command and support base." Zalkara's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "An excellent idea, General. The destruction of their space station will cripple their operations and demoralize their forces." Vrax added, "We can use our stealth ships to infiltrate their perimeter and plant disruption devices. These devices will interfere with their communications and navigation systems, making it easier for our main fleet to strike." The Empress considered the plan carefully. "Very well. Execute the following strategy. First, launch a coordinated surprise attack on the human fleet. Disrupt their communications and defenses. Second, deploy a secondary force to target the Eden and neutralize it. Third, maintain pressure on the human fleet to prevent them from regrouping or counterattacking." The council members nodded, their expressions a mix of determination and nervousness. They knew the plan was risky, but the rewards of victory were worth the risk. Zalkara's reputation for decisive action and cunning strategy was unmatched, and her confidence inspired those around her. Zalkara turned to her communications officer. "Send the orders to all fleet commanders. We will execute the attack at dawn. Prepare our ships and ensure that every unit is ready for battle. We cannot afford any delays." The communications officer bowed and began relaying the orders. As the officers moved quickly to implement the plan, Zalkara's gaze remained fixed on the holographic display. The fate of the Zalkari Empire, and perhaps the galaxy, rested on the outcome of this battle. She was determined to show the humans the true meaning of their mistake. As the preparations continued, the Empress took a moment to reflect on the gravity of the situation. The humans had dared to challenge her empire, and she could not allow their defiance to go unpunished. She would lead her forces to victory, demonstrating the strength and supremacy of the Zalkari Empire. The galaxy would see that no one could stand against them, and that their might was absolute. In the silence of the war room, the tension was palpable. The Zalkari fleet was ready, and the Empress's plan was set into motion. The coming battle would be fierce, but Zalkara was prepared to do whatever it took to secure her empire's dominance. The humans might have been bold, but they were about to learn the true cost of challenging the Zalkari Empire. As the final orders were given and the fleet prepared to move out, Empress Zalkara's thoughts turned to the imminent conflict. The time for preparation was over. The time for war had arrived, and she would lead her empire to triumph. The humans would face the full might of the Zalkari, and they would be left with no doubt about who ruled the galaxy. The first encounter. The vast emptiness of space was suddenly filled with the roar of engines and the glow of thousands of engines as the Zalkari fleet emerged from their hidden positions. The time had come for the first encounter between humanity and the Zalkari Empire. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as the massive armada, led by Empress Zalkara's flagship, the Dreadstorm, surged forward. On board the Eden, Admiral Marcus Stone and his team were at their stations, their faces tense with anticipation. The massive screen in the command center displayed the incoming Zalkari ships, their dark silhouettes stark against the backdrop of the galaxy. Admiral, Captain Elena Rodriguez's voice cut through the hum of activity. We've detected the Zalkari fleet. They're moving in fast and from multiple directions. It looks like they're planning to hit us from all sides. Marcus's jaw tightened as he studied the tactical display. They're not wasting any time. They must have received our position from their scouts. Prepare for immediate battle readiness. I want all supercarriers to assume battle formation. Elena nodded and relayed the orders. The command center buzzed with activity as crew members swiftly carried out their tasks. The supercarriers in the fleet moved into their defensive positions, their shields glowing brightly as they powered up their weapon systems. Admiral, the Zalkari have launched their attack. A young officer called out. They're deploying stealth ships to disrupt our communications and navigation. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Of course they are. They want to confuse us and take us out of our prepared formation. We need to counter this immediately, deploy our countermeasures, and get our fighters in the air. Outside the Eden, the space surrounding the human fleet erupted into chaos. Zalkari stealth ships darted between the supercarriers, their small size and advanced technology, making them difficult to target. Missiles streaked through space, targeting the human ships with deadly precision. On board the Valor, one of the supercarriers, Captain Alan Gray watched as the first wave of Zalkari fighters approached. All hands, prepare for incoming enemy fire, he shouted. Deploy defensive drones and ready the plasma turrets. We're about to engage. The Valor's defenses sprang to life, a network of drones swarming around the ship and plasma turrets tracking the incoming Zalkari fighters. The air inside the supercarrier was thick with tension as crew members worked to keep the ship intact amidst the barrage of enemy fire. In the command center, Marcus's eyes were fixed on the screen, tracking the progress of the battle. We need to push back their attack. Focus on those stealth ships first. If we can neutralize them, we can stabilize our communications and regain control. Elena nodded, her hands moving swiftly over her controls. Deploying countermeasures now. All fighter squadrons are engaging the enemy. The human fighters shot out from the supercarriers, their engines blazing as they tore into the ranks of Zalkari ships. The battle in space was fierce, with explosions lighting up the darkness as human and Zalkari ships clashed. The Zalkari had underestimated the resolve and skill of the human pilots. Admiral, we've neutralized several of the Zalkari stealth ships, an officer reported, but their main fleet is still pressing hard. They're targeting the Eden. Marcus's heart pounded as he realized the gravity of the situation. We can't let them take out the Eden. We need to reinforce its defenses and push back their main assault. As the battle raged on, Empress Zalkari observed the conflict from the bridge of the Dreadstorm. Her expression was a mix of satisfaction and frustration. The humans were putting up a strong resistance, but Zalkari was determined to break their will. General Thax, she said, her voice cold and commanding. Increase the pressure on their fleet. We need to break their formation and force them into retreat. Target their weaker points and keep them on the defensive." General Thax gave a nod and relayed the orders to the fleet. The Zalkari ships redoubled their efforts, launching a new wave of attacks designed to overwhelm the human defenses. The Dreadstorm itself moved closer to the Eden, its massive cannons primed to deliver devastating blows. On board the Eden, the crew worked tirelessly to fend off the relentless assault. Marcus and Elena coordinated their efforts, ensuring that every available resource was used to defend their position. The Supercarriers fought bravely, their weapons blazing as they engaged the Zalkari fleet. "Admiral, we've lost contact with several of our Supercarriers," a worried officer reported. "They're being overwhelmed by the Zalkari forces." Marcus's face hardened. "We need to hold the line, reinforce our positions, and keep fighting. We can't let them break through." Despite their best efforts, the Zalkari fleet continued to press their advantage. The human forces were stretched thin, their defenses battered by the relentless onslaught. The first encounter was proving to be a brutal test of their strength and resolve. As the battle raged, Marcus could see the determination in the eyes of his crew and pilots. They were fighting not just for victory, but for survival. The outcome of this encounter would set the tone for the rest of the conflict. The clash between the two mighty fleets continued, the outcome hanging in the balance. The humans had shown they were not to be underestimated, but the Zalkari Empire was not ready to concede defeat. The first encounter had proven to be a fierce and costly battle, with both sides demonstrating their strength and tenacity. In the midst of the chaos, one thing was clear: this was only the beginning. The galaxy would bear witness to the clash of two powerful forces, each determined to prove their dominance. As the battle continued, both sides braced themselves for the challenges ahead, knowing that the struggle for supremacy was far from over. The battle intensifies. The clash of fleets continued as the battle for dominance in the stars reached its peak. The emptiness of space was now a violent theater of destruction, with the human and Zalkari forces locked in a fierce struggle. The massive ships of both sides maneuvered through the chaos, each side determined to claim victory. On board the Eden, Admiral Marcus Stone and his team were working tirelessly to manage the crisis. The command center was a hub of activity, with screens flashing alerts and status updates from every corner of the battlefield. The ship shuddered under the impact of enemy fire, but its shields held strong. "Admiral, we've sustained significant damage to the outer hull," reported Lieutenant Kira Patel, her voice strained but steady. "We're holding on, but we need to start focusing on repairs and reinforcing our defenses." Marcus nodded, his face set in grim determination. "Understood. Prioritize repairs to the critical systems and keep our fighters in the air. We need to maintain pressure on the Zalkari fleet and prevent them from breaking through our lines." Outside the Eden, the scene was one of fierce combat. Zalkari ships, with their sleek designs and advanced weaponry, continued to press the attack. The massive Zalkari carriers loomed over the battlefield, their guns firing relentless barrages at the human fleet. Captain Elena Rodriguez, stationed on the Valor, barked orders as her crew scrambled to keep the ship operational. "Deploy additional defensive drones. We need to shield ourselves from their concentrated fire. And get those repair teams to the breach in the port side." The Valor was taking heavy damage, its armor plating scorched and hull pockmarked by Zalkari fire. Despite the damage, the crew fought on, their determination unshaken. The human fighters continued to engage the enemy, their pilots displaying remarkable skill and bravery. On the Zalkari flagship, the Dreadstorm, Empress Zalkari observed the battle with a cold, calculating gaze. Her plan had been to strike a decisive blow, but the humans had proven to be more resilient than anticipated. The initial attack had not been enough to break their defenses. "General Thax," Zalkari said, her voice cutting through the din of the command room. "We need to intensify our assault. Their defenses are tougher than expected, and we need to force them into retreat. increase firepower on their most heavily damaged supercarriers. General Fax nodded and relayed the orders to the fleet. The Zalkari ships adjusted their focus, concentrating their firepower on the human ships that were showing signs of wear. The battle became even more chaotic as the Zalkari pressed their advantage. On the Eden, the situation was becoming increasingly dire. The damage from the Zalkari's relentless assault was starting to take its toll. The ship's outer hull was weakened, and critical systems were struggling to stay operational. "Admiral, we've lost communication with our forward scout ships," a communications officer reported urgently. "They've been overwhelmed by enemy forces." Marcus's expression hardened. "We can't afford to lose any more assets. Redouble our efforts and focus on securing our lines. We need to protect our remaining ships and prevent further losses." The human fleet was fighting bravely, but the Zalkari's relentless pressure was taking its toll. The battle was now a test of endurance and strategy. Both sides were pushing their limits, with neither willing to concede an inch. Meanwhile, on the Valor, Captain Alan Gray was coordinating a counterattack. "All fighter squadrons, target the Zalkari carriers. We need to disrupt their formations and create openings for our main fleet." The human fighters swarmed around the Zalkari carriers, their missiles and energy weapons tearing into the enemy ships. The Zalkari fleet was forced to adapt, redirecting some of its firepower to deal with the new threat. Back on the Dreadstorm, Empress Zalkara's frustration was growing. The humans were proving to be a tougher adversary than she had anticipated. The battle was becoming a grind, with heavy losses on both sides. "General Fax," Zalkara said sharply, "we need to break their resolve. Prepare the experimental weapons. If necessary, we will use them to force a decisive end to this conflict." Fax gave a curt nod, understanding the gravity of the order. The experimental weapons, a new and devastating technology, were being prepared for deployment. Zalkara was prepared to use every tool at her disposal to secure victory. As the battle continued, the human fleet was showing signs of strain. The Zalkari attacks were relentless, and the damage was mounting. But the humans were not giving up. Their resolve was unshaken, and they fought with everything they had. On board the Eden, Marcus Stone and his crew were determined to hold their ground. Despite the mounting damage and losses, they refused to back down. The fight was far from over, and the outcome of the battle remained uncertain. The intensity of the battle was reaching its peak. Both sides were pushing their forces to the limit, each determined to emerge victorious. The clash between the human and Zalkari fleets was a brutal test of strength, strategy, and endurance. In the cold vacuum of space, the battle raged on, with neither side willing to concede defeat. The clash of titans continued, and the outcome of this epic confrontation would shape the future of the galaxy. Empress's defeat. The battle had raged for hours, and the once orderly battlefield had turned into a chaotic dance of destruction. The space around the Zalkari flagship, the Dreadstorm, was a tumultuous mess of flashing lights and explosions. The relentless assault from the human fleet was starting to turn the tide. The Zalkari forces, once confident in their superiority, were beginning to falter. On board the Dreadstorm, Empress Zalkara's frustration was palpable. Her sharp eyes darted across the tactical display, watching as the human fleet pushed back with renewed vigor. The experimental weapons, meant to deliver a decisive blow, had yet to be deployed, and the Zalkari fleet was struggling under the relentless pressure. "General Fax," Zalkara's voice was cold and commanding. "Our situation is deteriorating rapidly. The humans are holding their ground better than anticipated. We need to make a decision now. Prepare the experimental weapons for immediate deployment." General Fax, standing rigidly at attention, nodded and began coordinating the preparations. The experimental weapons, designed to be a game-changer in the battle, were being ready for use. But even as they were being prepared, it was clear that the Zalkari's position was growing increasingly precarious. On the Eden, Admiral Marcus Stone was analyzing the battlefield with a steely focus. The Zalkari forces were becoming disorganized, their attacks less coordinated. Marcus could see that the tide of the battle was shifting in their favor. "Captain Rodriguez," Marcus said, his voice steady and determined, "the Zalkari fleet is beginning to show signs of weakness. Let's press the advantage. Increase our offensive efforts and focus on the Dreadstorm. We need to cripple their flagship." Elena Rodriguez, her face set in a determined expression, quickly relayed the orders. The human fleet, bolstered by the Admiral's decision, redoubled their efforts. Fighters launched a new wave of attacks against the Zalkari flagship, their weapons scoring direct hits and causing significant damage. The Dreadstorm shook under the assault, its massive hull groaning as the impact of the human firepower took its toll. The ship's defenses struggled to keep up, and the Zalkari crew was pushed to their limits. "Admiral, the Zalkari flagship is taking heavy damage," a communications officer reported. "We're starting to see signs of internal damage and disarray among their forces." Marcus's eyes narrowed as he watched the display. "Good. Keep up the pressure. We need to ensure they don't recover from this." Back on the Dreadstorm, Zalkara's frustration was mounting. The experimental weapons were not ready in time to make a difference, and her flagship was being battered by the human fleet. The once proud ship was now a target of relentless human aggression. "General Thax, where are those weapons?" Zalkara demanded, her voice tinged with desperation. "We need them now." Thax's face was grim as he replied, "The experimental weapons are almost ready, Empress. But the damage to the Dreadstorm is critical. We may not have time to deploy them effectively." Zalkara's eyes flashed with anger. She could feel the battle slipping from her grasp. The humans had proven themselves to be a formidable adversary, and her once confident plans were falling apart. The Zalkari fleet was in disarray, and the flagship was on the brink of collapse. On board the Valor, Captain Alan Gray watched the progress with a mixture of relief and caution. "We've almost broken through their defenses," he said, "but we need to stay vigilant. They might try a desperate move to turn the tide." The human fighters continued their relentless assault, their missiles and energy beams cutting through the Zalkari ships. The flagship, the Dreadstorm, was taking the brunt of the attack, its once imposing presence now a battered shell of its former self. As the battle continued, Zalkara's desperation grew. The Zalkari forces were retreating, their once mighty fleet now a disorganized mess. The Dreadstorm was on the verge of being overwhelmed, and the Empress knew that the end was near. "General Thax," Zalkara said, her voice weary but resolute, "order a full retreat. We're abandoning the Dreadstorm and regrouping. We can't afford to lose any more ships." Thax hesitated for a moment before giving the order. The Zalkari fleet began to pull back, their once coordinated attacks turning into a desperate scramble for survival. The human fleet pressed their advantage, pushing the retreating Zalkari forces further into disarray. The Dreadstorm was left to fend for itself as the Zalkari ships withdrew. The flagship, heavily damaged and struggling to maintain its systems, was a shadow of its former glory. The human fleet continued to attack, targeting the straggling Zalkari ships and ensuring that the retreat was as costly as possible. In the aftermath of the battle, the human fleet emerged victorious. The Zalkari forces, once confident and aggressive, had been driven back. The Empress's plans had been thwarted, and the humans had demonstrated their strength and resolve. On the Eden, Marcus Stone and his crew took a moment to catch their breath. The battle had been intense and costly, but they had achieved a crucial victory. The Zalkari fleet had been defeated, and the threat of immediate danger had been pushed back. As the dust settled, and the stars returned to their quiet, distant glow, the human fleet began the process of assessing the damage and preparing for the challenges ahead. The clash with the Zalkari Empire had been a fierce and pivotal moment in the galaxy's ongoing struggle, and the outcome had shown the strength and determination of humanity. A new alliance. In the wake of the fierce battle, the battlefield was a desolate expanse of drifting debris and silent wreckage. The once thriving conflict zone now lay quiet, save for the occasional flicker of damaged systems trying to maintain their functions. The human fleet, having achieved a decisive victory over the Zalkari, began the process of recovery and repair. Admiral Marcus Stone stood on the bridge of the Eden, surveying the scene through the viewports. His face showed a mix of exhaustion and relief. The battle had been long and costly, but their resilience had won the day. "Admiral, the damage reports are coming in," Lieutenant Kira Patel said as she approached Marcus. "We've sustained significant losses, but the repairs are underway. We're also receiving signals from the Zalkari fleet requesting communication." Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised by the sudden request. "Requesting communication? After everything that's happened?" "Yes, sir," Kira confirmed. "It seems the Zalkari are reaching out to discuss terms. They're offering a ceasefire and are requesting a meeting to negotiate." Marcus's mind raced. The Zalkari's defeat was clear, but a ceasefire offer was unexpected. It could be an opportunity to secure lasting peace or simply a tactical move. Either way, it was a chance to explore a different path forward. "Very well," Marcus said, turning to face his crew. "Open a channel and prepare to negotiate. But let's remain cautious. We need to understand their intentions before making any decisions." As the communication channel was established, Empress Zalkara's holographic image appeared on the screen. Her once imposing presence now carried the weight of defeat. She looked tired and resigned, but there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Admiral Stone," Zalkara began, her voice steady but tired. "I come to you as a representative of the Zalkari Empire, seeking a ceasefire. The battle has shown that our forces are no match for yours, and we have suffered considerable losses. We wish to discuss the terms of peace." Marcus studied her carefully. "Empress Zalkara, your offer is unexpected. Why should we consider a ceasefire after the battle we've just fought?" Zalkara took a deep breath. "The battle has cost us dearly. We are not in a position to continue fighting. The Zalkari Empire has faced setbacks we cannot afford to ignore. We seek to negotiate a truce and explore the possibility of an alliance that could benefit both our peoples." Marcus looked over at his officers, who were all listening intently. He could see the skepticism in their eyes, but also the potential for a new beginning. "What kind of alliance are you proposing?" Zalkara's holographic image shifted slightly as she gathered her thoughts. "We propose a mutual defense pact and cooperation on trade and technology. The Zalkari Empire acknowledges the strength of humanity and seeks to build a relationship that could prevent further conflicts and promote stability in the galaxy." Marcus considered her words carefully. The idea of an alliance with the Zalkari could offer numerous advantages, but it was important to ensure that any agreement was mutually beneficial and not just a temporary reprieve. "Very well," Marcus said, nodding slowly. "We are willing to discuss terms. However, we will need to establish clear conditions and verify that your intentions are genuine." Zalkara's expression softened slightly, a sign of relief. "Understood, Admiral. We are prepared to meet your conditions and work towards a peaceful resolution." The negotiations began, and both sides worked diligently to outline the terms of their potential alliance. Empress Zalkara and Admiral Marcus Stone each brought their respective teams to the table, and discussions were conducted with a blend of formality and cautious optimism. As the talks progressed, it became clear that both sides had valid concerns and interests. The Zalkari wanted to ensure that their remaining forces were not threatened, while the humans sought assurances of cooperation and mutual respect. On board the Eden, the crew worked tirelessly to facilitate the negotiations and maintain a watchful eye on the Zalkari fleet. Trust was fragile, and both sides were determined to ensure that the peace they sought would be sustainable. After several hours of discussions, an agreement was reached. The terms included a mutual defense pact, joint research initiatives, and the establishment of regular diplomatic exchanges. Both sides agreed to a cessation of hostilities and to work together towards a shared vision of stability in the galaxy. As the agreement was finalized, Zalkara's holographic image appeared once more. "Admiral Stone, I believe we have reached a meaningful agreement. I look forward to working together and building a new future for our peoples." Marcus nodded, a sense of cautious optimism in his voice. "Agreed, Empress Zalkara. Let's work towards a future where both our civilizations can thrive in peace and cooperation." With the agreement in place, the human and Zalkari fleets began the process of disbanding their hostile positions and working towards rebuilding relations. The battle that had once seemed like an insurmountable conflict had transformed into an opportunity for a new alliance. As the stars began to return to their serene glow, the galaxy found itself on the cusp of a new chapter. The conflict had been intense, but the possibility of peace and cooperation now seemed within reach. The future held promise, and the alliance between the humans and Zalkari offered hope for a more stable and harmonious galaxy.